Without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sharon Burgos. Sharon is a Senior Solutions Architect here at RKL Solutions, has many years experience working with Stage 100, probably will be a familiar voice and a friendly name for several of you on today's call. And also joining her in background support will be Lynette Felsch. So thank you again for joining today's session. I'll moderate any questions and answers that are presented, and I'll circle back with you at the end here. So take it away, Sharon.
All right, so good morning, everybody, or good afternoon for our East Coasters. For today's agenda, we're going to talk about preparing for payroll year-end processing. We're also going to take a look at the period end and year-end processing reports that are available in Sage. Talk about filing your quarterly and your year-end forms, as well as running your W-2s and 3s through Sage's utility that's run via Atrix. We'll actually take a look at doing a full period end close and what's involved with doing tax table updates, some of the post year-end processing things to consider, ACA for those of you where it's applicable, touch base with what some of the resources are so that you don't feel left abandoned. This entire presentation will also be available to you, as Walt mentioned, so if you want to follow up with that by going through this slideshow later on, you're welcome to do so. So in getting prepared for year-end, most of you already have Paperless Office turned on, and if you don't, we strongly recommend you consider doing so. It generates the PDF files for you. Those PDF files will capture not only your journals and registers, but in this case, obviously, your period end processing reports that you have pre-established as ones that you want captured. When you do so, we'll talk to you about it if you have any questions, but oftentimes we work with you to figure out which reports are most appropriate for your given business scenario. We also need to make sure that you're on the minimum supported version of Sage or higher so that the year-end updates can be applied. There are several updates that are coming, and you'll see those in the slides that we get into in just a few minutes. But we need to make sure that you're running any one of these 4 versions that are listed on the screen here or higher. That includes service updates. For any of you who don't know how to find out what version you're on, if you open Sage and then you click on Help and choose About, it will tell you what version you are running as well as the service update. So you have to be on 2015 Service Update 5, 2016 Service Update 3, 2017 Service Update 1, or 2018 for you to be able to run your tax table updates and all the other software updates that are coming. If your version doesn't meet that and you would like help getting yourself upgraded, please reach out to us. At the end of the slideshow, there's contact information there as well, so we'll get to that shortly. By the way, anybody who is on 2015, this is the last year-end update that's going to be available for 2015. After this, 2015 will no longer be supported. So for preparing your system to do the payroll quarter and year-end processing, the first thing we'd like you to do is just double check. In your payroll setup options, we want to make sure that your checkbox there that says retain perpetual payroll history, that little checkbox has to be selected. If that's not done, we'll not be able to retain the history for the ACA reporting. So it's very, very important that that checkbox is turned on before you run your period end processing inside payroll. For those of you running payroll, you're used to the notion of payroll being run on a quarterly basis, including year-end, so for the calendar year-end. When you run it, it's important to understand that both quarter-to-date and if you're in the 4th quarter, then also year-to-date information is automatically purged by the system when you do so. If you want to retain that information, and we strongly recommend that you do, it's very important that you create your backups. There's 2 types of backups. There's a proper system backup that your IT group would help you with. There's also the copy company function that you're all familiar with, and we've set up naming conventions with many of you so that you keep copies of each of the company history available to you as it was at the time before you ran payroll period end. It's important that you do so before you begin entering anything new in the new, before you do period end and enter any new payroll. So this has to be done. If you happen to run into the case where you're under a time crunch and you need to run the new payroll, create the backup company before you do period end. You can then run period end in your live company and do your period end reporting out of the backup company. Clearly that's not the preferred means. but it certainly does work well, particularly when you're in a time crunch. Let's keep going. This is a small workflow chart here. Basically, it's an overview of what period end processing should look like. We can go through it a little bit. You're going to run your last payroll for the quarter. You'll do your database backup. At that time, you're going to create the new company, as we just discussed. Some of the things that we have documented, just from a color coding standpoint here, you'll see anything that's in a white box here. We've got that information in subsequent slides. But we're going to talk about printing your quarterly reports, printing and filing your 941 and state tax forms, printing W-2s when appropriate, performing year-end processing to clear all the quarter-to-date, and if you're on the fourth quarter, year-to-date data, updating the tax tables. That's very important. We'll talk about that as well. And then you can manually update the tax tables for unemployment, disability, and local taxes if that's appropriate for your state. And then you process your first payroll in the new quarter or the new year. So, printing the quarterly and year-end, if you're in the fourth quarter, this is important. We want to run those reports. When you open up payroll under reports, you're going to see a series of reports here that we suggest that you run. Typically what we end up doing is have you run these reports, you balance everything, make sure it looks good. If there are any things that need to be adjusted, you make those corrections and adjustments before we close the period. You'll also be able to run your quarterly governmental report and your employee totals verification. So these are ones that you'll want to save, but you should do so before you run your period end processing. This is a lot of information. I'm not going to read through it all, but you're welcome to. This kind of gives you a recap of all of the different reports that we suggest that you run, and when you run them, this is what kind of information you'll see in those given reports. These same reports can be set up so that you copy them to PDF and it automatically goes into paperless office for you if you wish. The actual tax forms themselves, anyone who has been doing this for years with Sage, you'll remember you could run the tax forms out of Sage. Well, as of a few versions ago, Sage decided that no more. They were going to actually marry up with a group called Atrix. Atrix is a subscription-based solution. If you are current on your Sage maintenance care plan, you automatically get this at no cost for you. Basically what it does is it allows you to make a connection to Atrix's website, and through their site the system automatically loads onto your computer all the most current forms for federal and all states. It's awfully convenient because you don't have to manage and maintain these as in the old version where you'd have to contact us and download the most current forms, etc. To have this product in place, we do, we'll talk about it in a minute, we do have to make sure that on the machine where you're running these, we have the e-filing plugin added onto your local workstation. It's kind of like a reporting function. You're going to need the software installed locally for that to work. But this is where you're going to run your 941s and your 941 Schedule B. You can also print any applicable sales tax form. So this walks you right through it. You go to payroll period end and you run this. Don't let the name fool you. Just because it says e-filing doesn't mean that you are forced to choose the e-filing option. 90% of the steps that we run in this utility all are done on screen and printing out copies for your own files. It's the very last set of steps where they offer up the option to electronically file if you so choose. Pricing information is presented at that time, and it's not something in Sage's control. This is a function and feature of Atrix. But we have found, especially for clients who have large amounts of data, it pays itself off in spades. It's a great little utility. All right, at calendar year end, you're going to want to print or e-file your W-2 and W-3s. You like I mentioned, we always want to make sure that you try to run this from your live company. If that's not possible, so long as you have a proper backup, you could run it from the backup company. We'll talk about that as well. Points out the same, if you actually have to reprint after year-end processing, you can still go to the backup company and rerun it from there, so long as you don't close the period in the backup company. That's a snapshot of what your company data was before you ran period end. You go to payroll, open period end. That's where you're going to find the reporting. It does not live under the reports folder. It lives under period end. In order to access it, you have to have an active Sage Business Care Plan, which we talked about, an internet connection so that you can actually reach out. The system will automatically reach out and look to Atrix's site, making sure that on your workstation you have the most current forms. You also have to be on a supported version of Sage. For the tax filing year 2017, the supported versions of Sage are 2015 through 2018. 2018 just came out. Lynette has done an amazing job of documenting in a sample run of this whole thing. So if you wanted to see what a sample run would look like, where you go from one screen to the next, that document is available. We just simply need to have you request it from us. And I think Walt and company are going to make that available on the site as well. To print or to e-file the W-2, W-3 forms via Atrix, I apologize for the smallness of the screen here, but when you actually go and launch the application, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to look to your machine and see whether or not your forms are current. It's going to ask you whether or not it can do the update. This first button here says automatic update. We suggest that you go ahead and click that button. Just as a side note, I have found on several of our clients where IT is very, very tough about security. Sometimes the site that it wants to go to is not made as a safe zone. If you run into a problem with that, have your IT person make sure that you have permissions on your computer to access that site so that it can download the appropriate forms. Once it is done, it will have updated your local machine with all of the current forms for every state and for federal, and then you can go and run. When you go to run it, sometimes it's a little bit disconcerting. When this screen first pops up over here, the federal e-filing and reporting lists a year that may not be the year you're interested in. It won't actually show you the current year's forms until the update itself is finished. Once it's finished, then it will present it. So don't worry about that. Select the form code. So if you know you were doing a W-2, let's say, then just go ahead and pick the form code, allow it to finish the updates. Once it's done with the updates, the dates here will be reflective of the current year, which is exactly what we want. If you happen to be printing from a backup company, this utility reads out of company maintenance what all your settings are, your address, your EIN, etc. If in your backup company you don't have that same information defined in company maintenance, you can either do that by defining it in company maintenance, or you can change it on screen here. It's your choice. If you change it on screen in the Atrix screen, it is a one-time change. It's just for the data run that you're doing. If you say, no, I'd like it to be there, so if ever I need to do it again, make sure you go into Library Master, Company Main, Company Maintenance, pick your backup company, fill in that information to match your live company, and you're all set. Part of this is, we do hear a lot of people get confused by the name, so don't worry about that. You are still able to print all of the W-2s, 1099s, and a myriad of other forms right to your printer at no cost. There is a guide in Sage's portal. It's called Guide on How to Use E-Filing and Reporting in Sage 100. If you log into the customer portal at Sage, you're welcome to download that, and it provides step-by-step instructions with screenshots, etc., for how to process all these forms. All right, keep going. When you go to perform period end in the live company to close the quarter, we need to make sure that you've completed all your quarter and year-end reports and that you have them printed. Again, we hope that you have paperless turned on. It doesn't take up much space, and it is awfully nice to have that at your beck and call whenever you want, instead of having to worry about going back to old versions. You need to validate your W-2s have been printed or e-filed if you're in the fourth quarter. We also want to make sure that your backup copy company of your live data has been created. For those of you who have a large number of modules, particularly where there's a large amount of data in those modules, you don't have to do a full company backup. You can pick particular modules. The ones that you will need at a minimum are listed right here: payroll, GL, and common information. When you pick payroll, the other two will auto-select themselves. That is, as a minimum, what you would need to be able to run payroll out of a backup company, should you need to do so. When you are ready, you go down into the payroll module, choose period end, then pick period end processing. Once you pick period end processing, you'll find that there's a series of options that display. If you're at year end, you're going to do quarter and year end processing. There's a reminder at the bottom telling you if you're doing the year-end processing, make sure that your W-2 forms have been printed before you continue. When you're ready to, hit proceed, and off she goes. Tax table updates are also important. We need to make sure that you're on the most current tax table update for the quarter. If you're going to be doing quarter end, Sage hasn't released them yet, but they are soon going to be released. The updates have to be run before the first payroll of the new year. We say that with an asterisk on there. Sage doesn't have a set schedule for releasing tax table updates. They are driven by when the government releases tax table updates themselves. As soon as those releases are done, Sage updates their files, and they automatically send an email to you if you are on their email list. To know whether or not you're on their email list, your portal access will tell you right then and there whether or not you have that information turned on, if you want to be emailed with notifications from Sage. At the end of the slideshow, your RKL representative's information is presented on that last slide. If you would like help with that, just simply reach out to either Mike or Gio. You'll see their names on that slide, and they'll help you figure that out. So you should get notification from Sage when the tax table updates are available. You can simply download and install the tax table updates. Once they're in place, depending on any additional requirements you have, you may need to go into Payroll Tax Table Maintenance. Payroll Tax Table Maintenance is found under the Setup in Payroll. When you get down into there, I should have probably put a note in here, but I'll update you as well. I'll tell you over the phone as well. Type in the state code that you're interested in and fill in any information for state unemployment, disability, local tax rates and limits, and so on. You can handle that right in here if it's applicable for your state. Also, if you want to get into what the tax tables are for federal, type in where it says state field up here on the upper left, type in FED. If you type in FED, that will show you what the tax rates are for federal. There are warnings that come with this if you are unfamiliar with what you're doing here, or if you look to change things like your tax calculation steps. Those are things that should not be touched without specific guidance from either Sage or Sage RKL representative. Those things are not to be played with. They will make serious mistakes happen. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to give us a call. We will more than happily help. Things to consider when you're talking payroll year-end, timing. Timing is always a challenge. We need to make sure that we have that backup in place and that no one is in the system when you do copy this over so that you have a nice clean copy. We also want to make sure that the tax table updates, if they are available, have been installed. Tax table updates should be done after you're finished with the last payroll of the year because those updates are going to be applicable going forward. There's also something called an IRD, an interim release download that Sage will release at the end of each year, where modifications to payroll processing that are code specific, they're program specific, are released. This is done in order for Sage to keep payroll compliant with current laws. That software has to be downloaded and installed before you run your next payroll in the coming year. Currently, I talked with them, I think it was yesterday, and they said their target release date is December 20th. But that's plus or minus. We don't know for certain. I also tried to get some insights as to what may be coming in it, and that information has not been released to anybody yet. So we will know at the time it's released, as will you. Sage should send out notifications so long as they're on the emailing list. E-filing and reporting, there's a software update that's supposed to come for Atrix, and that is scheduled to be released on the 21st. Again, that's a target release date. You need to access e-filing to get that update. So when you actually go to run this, how do you get the update? Just simply start up the application. The application, like I said, is no more than a reporting tool. It does not modify anything inside Sage's data, but it will download any form updates, and in this case, software updates. But that software update is supposed to happen on the 21st, so I would suggest if you want to do it, calendar it for the 22nd. You must be on the supported version of Sage, which we discussed, for that IRD and Atrix update to happen. It is the same requirement that was listed in the earlier slides, so if you take a look back at those, it'll tell you what version and service update are your minimum requirements. As a quick reminder, anybody who's still on 2015, this is the last year that Sage will be supporting 2015 for the IRD and for the tax table updates. After this year, you need to be off of 2015 for you to be able to download and get the software from Sage for your software system for Sage. When you are installing the IRD, it will double check. If it's not the correct version, it'll stop you and certainly let you know that. You'll also need product update unlocking keys. Those will be made available by Sage in and around the same period, sometime in December, I would assume the 20th or 21st. Any questions? All right. Other features. ACA, Affordable Care Act. Those features must be set up and downloaded prior to processing ACA reporting. ACA employer and employee information is included. You need to make sure that both of those are complete. If you own Visual Integrator, that's a module in the modules list. Data can be imported into the ACA files. Further in the slides, there's a link that will show you where in Sage you can either download a document that helps you through that, or you can reach out to RKL and we'll help you get that done if you would like to use VI to load those files. We also need to make sure, as we mentioned earlier, that perpetual history is enabled in the payroll setup and that the employer ACA maintenance is accurate for each year. Other things to think about: if you have fringe benefits, have you processed those for the year? And have you processed your employer contribution deduction reporting for ACA employer-sponsored health care on your W-2? And those are just good ticklers, reminders. Make sure we get them done. There are resources available for what the current IRS rules are. For anything RKL provides you and for anything that Sage's website provides you, it will constantly come with the same disclaimer. This is not official and absolute documentation. We're only providing guidelines, and even so, it is most important that you reach out to the official IRS website to get the guidelines directly from there, and or check with your accountant to validate the requirements for your company. We've put in here what the IRS website is, so if you want to get to that spot, you can use this link here and jump over there and start looking through it. If you'd like any help understanding some of this, you can reach out to us or to your accountant, and we'll give you some direction. But again, it's only guidelines. You are far more encouraged to go directly to the IRS with those questions because they're the ones to whom you report. The Affordable Care Act is going to require employers with more than 50 employees or that are self-insured to report health care insurance information to the IRS. There are a variety of different caveats in that, which is why it's important that you see the IRS rules to determine whether or not you qualify for ACA. There are ACA forms. The forms, they're listed here as just a flow chart. Do you offer health insurance to your employees, yes or no? And then you simply follow through this. This, again, is walking you through the basic concepts of whether or not you need to file, and if you do, here's what you would need to file. When you go through this, it would be good to use this when you're talking to your accountant to see whether or not they agree with you, and you can cross-check this against the IRS's website. Does anyone have any questions about this workflow? Nope. All righty.
So far, so good, Sharon. No questions submitted.
For ACA qualification, the simple question is whether you have at least 50 full-time employees. Note that this does include FTEs, full-time employee equivalents. So if you look, where is it in here, on a business day during the preceding calendar year, for example, if your 2016 employee count determines whether or not you'll be required to track and report employee and health coverage information in 2017. So this would be 2017 and 2018. But yeah, there's that. There's also whether or not you are considered a subsidiary reporting under another company. So we'll get to that in one moment. This is it here. No, this is not it. So the ACA Employee Maintenance. This is where we're going to collect information that's going to be used on the 1095-C form. This 1095, this information that's entered in here is one of the things that we had mentioned earlier. If you have information and you don't want to key it all in by hand because of its volume, we can help you get that data imported. The information that you're going to need for the 1095-C form is listed over here in this little blue box. You can read through that at your leisure. And then if the provide self-insured coverage, if the employee enrolled in an employee-sponsored self-insurance health care coverage offered by your company, you can click the covered individual to enter information for each covered person. If you're not, if the employer was not, if the employee was not enrolled in your self-sponsored self-insurance health care coverage, then make sure you unselect it here. This is going to determine count. This information is found under the ACA folder. You have the ACA Employee Maintenance, the Employer Maintenance, and then the large employer report. Your monthly detail. You get to select the offer of coverage and the employee share. It's important that you check with your insurance provider to validate this first. Once you know that you have the offer of coverage, you can fill in the information over here. And then once it's actually filled in, you can use this little button here, this little utility, and it will copy the information from one row down through the next, saving you data entry time. Okay? Covered individuals. You have to list every person covered by the insurance and which months they had coverage. Very important. This is what will actually get printed and sent. The employer maintenance. So from an employer maintenance standpoint, the 1094C form is going to be populated. If you are less than 50 employees, but you are going to be part of an aggregated group, then you need to make sure that you check this checkbox down here on the bottom of the screen, ALE member, part of aggregated group. So you may be less than 50 employees, but you're reporting under a larger group, which qualifies you then as being 50 or more. So here's our large employer report. This report is only available if you qualify, but at the end of the year, you can run this report and populate employee and hours information by month in the employer maintenance monthly detail. There's a quick list in here of steps, and it walks you through how to do it, but it's a very nice report. There is a caveat with this, and I think that is here. There it is. Sage cannot and does not guarantee the report's accuracy or applicability to your circumstances. So it is important, though, even though the report does provide you valuable information, it's your responsibility to ensure that the data is correct and complete. Hours of service must be reported by calendar month. Because hours are worked by pay periods, and they may span more than 1 month, the calculation is performed to get an approximate monthly total. Therein lies that rub about the accuracy piece. The total is an estimate and may not reflect the actual hours worked. For specific or legal advice, this is where we suggest again that you reach out to your accountant or tax service provider attorney. To create an employer contribution deduction for employer-sponsored healthcare coverage, it's required that you report the cost of this if you're under an employer-sponsored group health plan. Reporting, I think it's in here, deduction type. So if it's an employer contribution, it doesn't mean that the coverage is taxable. The value of the employer's excludable contribution to health coverage continues to be excludable from an employee's income, so thereby it's not taxable. So that's pretty straightforward. Your deductions are going to be found under payroll, under setup. There's deduction code maintenance. You can scroll through those by using the next record button and get your list to make sure that you understand what your employer contribution deductions are. There's also reports to collect the same information. When you go to generate your 1094C and your 1095C forms, these also will be generated by using the e-filing utility. That's going to be Atrix's Yearend, and it's going to be included in the year-end update. So when that update is released in December on the 21st-ish, those forms would be made available, and after that date should download directly onto your machine as soon as you launch that little application. A 1095 will be generated for all employees who have the information entered on the ACA Employee Maintenance monthly detail or covered individual screen. To get to this, as I mentioned, you're going to open Payroll, Period End, and you're going to open Federal E-Filing and Reporting. After installing that update, the 1094 and 95 forms will be listed. If you want to import ACA information, the Visual Integrator module will allow you to do so. You can reach out to RKL, or you can actually use the Sage Knowledge Base article, Where Are the Affordable Care Act Visual Integrated Jobs Located? If you download that knowledge base article, it tells you what files you need and approximately how to get this done. You're also more than welcome to have one of us jump in and help you square this away if you would like that information imported. If you have version 4.50 or 23 installed and you're not able to upgrade to 2014 or higher, you can use the ACA worksheet to collect that information, and then you can import it afterwards once the product update is released. You have to own the Visual Integrator module for you to be able to use it, but I think most of you on our list have it. If not, just give us a holler. If you would like to, you can actually go onto Sage's portal and look at the ACA reporting worksheet for Sage 100 ERP. That is in the knowledge base as well. So RKL Contacts, for those of you who are west of the Mississippi, Mike Scherer is our RKL guy who handles all of our clients west of the Mississippi. His contact information is in front of you. Gia Lane handles everybody east of the Mississippi, and her contact information is here as well. Many of you have already talked with these people, and they are outstanding. They make for excellent liaisons between us, the consultants, and clients to Sage. So anytime we have any Sage-related questions, we usually grab one of those two and have them help us get it all squared away. Saves a lot of work, and they have great contacts over there. And then we also have the sales team. So if you want any information about pricing, compatibility, what potential cost of consulting might be, depending on what you're looking for, reach out to the sales team at the email listed here, sales@rklesolutions.com. If you have specific support-related questions and you'd like to reach out to our support team, that's support@rklesolutions.com. Both of them use the same main line, and then simply follow the prompts. So that is a run-through of all of this. It is high level. As I mentioned, there are some additional documents that are going to be shared as well as links, and Walt and company are going to make those available to everybody who's on the call and want to have questions you'd like to go over. This is going to be moving to version 2018 of Sage 100. You'll be receiving in that version a new version of the Sage payroll module. One of the features of that payroll module is that you no longer have to create backup companies in the re-architected version of the payroll module. That software will now retain the history much like it does in every other module in Sage. Based on whatever our retained settings are, it will hold on to our historical data so that we don't have to create period end and quarter end and year end backup companies for every iteration of closing the payroll module. So that's an aside. I don't think we have anybody currently in our Sage 100 world who is running the 2018 version of Sage with payroll yet. So just keep that in the back of your mind for when we do upgrade you to 2018 or higher. That's going to be one of the significant changes. So questions? Anybody have anything they want to go over on payroll period end?
I have a question, Sharon. This is Peggy.
Hi, Peggy.
Hi. When I create the new year, does the employee contribution deduction carry forward to the new year, or does it need to be set up for each employee all over again?
Are you talking the contribution rate?
Correct.
I believe that carries forward. Lynette, you jump in if I'm not correct, but I'm pretty sure that carries forward. The only things that clear when you create the new year are going to be quarter-to-date and year-to-date totals that system maintains.
Sharon, that's correct, unless they have to make any changes. Otherwise, they would just stay the same.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question. What is the visual integrator module? What does it import that could help us with ACA? Because from what we experienced last year, we had to go into each company for the previous year and add these things all over again. So in other words, it doesn't carry forward. Like there's nothing in there for 2017 for the employees for the ACA module. So there's no way to do it except to add 2017 to each employee, which is a lot of work. So what does the visual integrator module do that would help with that?
Visual integrator is a tool that allows us to import data from an external source like an Excel file or a CSV file. There are many sources that you can pull from and push data into any given module within Sage. The payroll aspect of this allows us to take we could actually generate a report out of the payroll module that gives us the information we need, turn around and use the output file from that report to push data back into other spots in the payroll module. So if we needed to populate ACA employer and employee information, well, the employer is pretty straightforward, but the employee information can be an arduous task depending on how much you've got. We could actually create the report and push the data back in using Visual Integrator to import that data for us. VI can be used for many other modules, but given the topic today, we're just simply talking payroll.
Is that cost based on their number of employees? Is that something you'd have to contact your support team or sales team just to see what the cost of that is?
If you don't own the Visual Integrator module, it's a one-time purchase for that module, and it can be used, it is not specific to what you import or the size of what you import. So you either own the module or you don't. If it's not in your installed modules listing or you don't see it on the menu list, then yes, you would reach out to sales at RKL Solutions and give them your information, and they'll go ahead and work with you to find out what it would cost to get you that module. Once it's in place, keep in mind that it can be used all over the place. We have clients who do this where they import information from the bank, where they import sales information from websites. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can bring into Sage on a recurring basis, so the tool could be used for other things as well. It's not necessarily a one-time use function.
Okay. We usually generate our W-2s after year end just because we have some things we need to compile that we may not have ready, and we always do it from the previous year company file. We've never had a problem with that, but each year they stress do it before you do the first payroll. Is there a reason for that?
Just being familiar with what it takes to get it done in the backup company. If you've done it once or twice, it's old school for you, you're fine. For those people who've never done this before, that might be a little confusing to them, particularly keeping them from doing period end in that backup company. That's the one thing that makes me nervous. We've got to make sure people leave that company alone. You can report out of it all day long, just don't run period end in the backup company.
Okay. Yeah, I know we had several problems last year, and I know I did talk to Lynette, and she helped us through it. I believe it was all with the ACA reporting. We had some issues with that, but it was, the first year we did it through the system. The other year I actually did them one by one, so by hand. Okay. That's not.
No. So let's talk about that. We can set up a time with you if you want to take a look at it, and then Lynette and or I will jump in and we'll help you get that squared away. Not a problem.
Okay, I probably was going to refer this to our IT guy for him to talk to someone. I just actually run the payroll, so.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. All right, Peggy, thank you. Good questions.
Great, thanks.
You bet. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Okay. Joan, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
In previous years, you've told me that the new tax rates go global. Is that still going to be the same?
Yes.
As far as...
the tax rate, yes. So the tax rates, once you install them, they are applied across all company codes. So even in your old company code where you have your backup, once you install the new tax table updates, sorry about that. Once you install the new tax table updates, those tax table updates are applied across all company codes. It's a single install. If you need to go back and run something in one of your old backup companies, if the tax table updates are applicable at that point, you can reinstall the old tax table updates just long enough to get your reporting completed. Once the reporting is completed in the old company, you reinstall the tax table updates for the live system. Once they're in place, you're back up and running. This is one of the reasons that we usually recommend trying to get things done in the live company before you make all these changes. For exactly that reason, if you have to go back and reinstall it, it's not difficult to do. Some people find it a little bit nerve-wracking if they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. But it's pretty straightforward, and we're always available to help you if you like. Okay, good questions.
Good.
Anybody else?
I don't see any other questions, so I wanted to, before we conclude, I wanted to remind everybody there's an additional Sage Year-end preparation webinar scheduled for Thursday, December 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's going to focus specifically on closing the Sage 100 modules with step-by-step instructions through the close process. And next Tuesday, on December 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Danielle Hoffer, who's the Director of HR for RKL CPA, will cover the latest HR policy updates and procedures, including how to clean up tax forms, 1094s, 1095s, significant 401k changes in 2018, employee compensation and bonuses, as well as new vacation accruals and Q&A sessions. That session next Tuesday is not specific to any Sage product. It's a general HR practice session for you and your team. This concludes today's session.